Hey guys, it's me Lachlan, and a regular asked question of my channel is, am I still covering Battlefield 4? Well, the answer to that is yes, and today I thought I'd bring it back with some new tactics videos for you guys to look at. Now, one of the biggest components of how I play, like practically the bread and butter of my Battlefield 4 recordings, is selective engagement. Now, selective engagement is decision making and making snap decisions based on external factors. Staying alive is really important to the objective and flow of play for your team, and of course if you're a YouTuber as well, it makes editing a much easier task to do. So today we're going to tackle this concept and look at how to put it into practice in game. So the first engagement we're going to be looking at is the hiding engagement, I like to call it. And there can be some circumstances when you're playing Battlefield 4 that not shooting at all is actually your best bet. Now this really applies to lots of clustered maps like Metro and Operation Locker. It can be really tempting to rack up some easy kills, but it may not result in the best outcome for your team. Now, for example, in this scenario, suppressor or not, if I kill this player, it would result in the enemy team being alerted that we have made it past their defenses and are on the counter-attack. That means if we capture Alpha, we can push them all the way back, but if I lay down a shot and somebody dies and he sees the kill cam and knows where I am, it's likely reinforcements are going to follow to that position. So that's the first kind of instance where basically just not shooting is really your best option. The second selective engagement is about knowing your opponent. Now you can probably guess what class of weapon your enemy has when he first fires at you, and what you need to do is make a logical decision based off of your chances of winning a firefight on gun classes and maybe external factors as well. Now in my opinion, the worst thing that you could do at Battlefield is underestimate your opponent. Always presume that he or she is of a good skill and of a good standard. So for example, in this instance here, I have an SMG or a PDW, and it appears that the enemy downrange has either a DMR or an SR338. Now what you have to remember is that these weapons have of course that ridiculous amount of range, but also the possibility within that range to inflict a good amount of damage in a short period of time. Sometimes DMRs are commonly referred to as spam cannons because they can do exactly that. So the last thing you really want to do here is go at it head on. Now I would suggest, if you're the kind of player who's looking to stay alive for longer instances and also improve their KD or improve their scoring, is to use smoke grenades. Now smoke grenades do not do any lethality, they do not have any kind of thing that's going to kill people, but what they do is provide you with options. There's lots of alternatives where you're going to be using smoke grenades. I could get pinned down in a position with somebody who has a much higher range weapon, but still have the advantage because I can confuse them with smoke grenades. They're rarely used in the game, and when they are, it really does surprise the opponent. In another similar circumstance here, we have an LMG versus an assault rifle. Now it is plausible that I can land a shot, but if this player is any decent and bipoded down, I have a very thin line to walk on. Again, smoke grenades, they're just vital. They are honestly one of the most underestimated pieces of equipment in Battlefield. You throw down a smoke grenade and you get the correct movement, then you're in a much better situation to lay down fire and obviously win the gun battle. Now if I flip over to the opposite perspective, you can see that with an LMG bipoded, you might think, okay, at first instances I see a guy who's either laying down or crouching, should be a very easy shot. But what you have to remember is that if this person is in a decent position, it's likely that his field of view is completely covering any kind of plausible movement that you can make. So moving left, right, or even peeking over means that he'll just be readily waiting for you to make that movement and likely take you down almost instantaneously. So you have to kind of almost metaphorically put yourself in the other person's shoes and think, okay, well if I was in that situation with a bipod, I'd know that any time this person makes even a fraction of a movement, I have complete control of the situation. So make sure you keep that in mind when talking about when you're considering taking on an opponent, or just in general, if you're looking at a situation and you value up things and you value up what your opponent could be capable of, it means you have a much higher chance of actually succeeding what you're trying to do. So say for example I'm pushing an objective or I'm trying to take out a cluster of enemies. If I know exactly what their capable of, where they're positioned, and what that position may entail, that means that I have the opportunity to try and unravel that, find a way or find some kind of loophole where that position is not going to be as effective as they first thought. Now, the next engagement is height-based, and one thing that really astounds me is that sometimes I see players at lower positions attempt to take on somebody with a height advantage. Now, again, we're talking about logical decisions here, and when the player above me peaks, it's likely that they will have much more cover to work with and a lower chance of being shot. Another thing that you need to remember on the flip side of things is that their view is fixated on you. Again, any movement you make by even the slightest of fractions will likely be detected. So from the height advantage perspective, you can see that shooting the enemy in comparison is A, a lot easier because they have less cover, and B, I can make it certain that the enemy is pinned to that spot. So by thinking about this, as a player who is on the lower height level, I can think, okay, well that guy's most likely got me pinned. If I move, I'm dead. Smoke grenade, flashbang, distraction, something that's going to put him off and give me time to get into a much better position. What you need to remember about any kind of selective engagement, and whenever you're deciding about whether a challenge is worth taking on, is thinking about, is there an external factor at hand here that's going to play in their favour? So for example, is height going to help him out? Is the weapon he's using going to help him out? Is there a number of enemies around him that's going to support him? Could there be something like a nearby enemy vehicle which is suppressing you? You always have to think about these things before you take a player on. My final general piece of tactical advice when it comes to taking on opponents is when it comes to multiple people. Now you may notice in some videos with some YouTubers, they manage to land like triple kills and quadruple kills or 5 kills, and you just think, well, how did they manage to do that? Taking on any kind of multiple person situation can be very challenging. The size of your magazine could be a limitation, among many other factors. You can quite easily be detected and extinguished by an opponent should you be too obvious, or should you fall short of taking out all of the enemies. There are two viable options here. Firstly, you could take a more dynamic route, try and hit it with a surprise attack. That could likely at least belittle their numbers, but it may maximize your kills and effectively take them down. But the problem with this tactic is that eventually lots of players are going to fixate on you and root you out. What you need to remember is Battlefield players quite literally are like vultures. The minute you fire a shot, they will converge on you as much as they can and try and take you down. The best option, in my opinion, is the hangback approach, and you might have seen me do this in a couple of my videos. So what I do when I see a large amount of enemies is I position myself in an area which has a clear view of their occupation, so I can try and kick them off little by little. By doing that, I can rack up the kill count without throwing myself into direct danger, and I tend to rotate my hangback points to avoid being taken out by those I've just killed. So guys, I hope this video was helpful for you today when considering your attacking options and how you engage your opponents in Battlefield 4. If you learned something or enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button below. It's been me, the Tactical Brit, and as always, thank you for watching.